Welcome to Encounter Wargaming. I'm Jay, and today we're going to be continuing our look at the second edition of the rules. Today I'm going to be showing you the remainder of the cards for this edition, which is basically your psychic powers and all that stuff. Alright, so we're sitting down again to finish off taking a look at all the cards that I showed you guys last week. So we're still taking a look at second edition, obviously, and I've showed you guys the mission cards. I showed you guys the strategy cards. So if you haven't seen those, go back and take a look at last week's video. I also showed you the vehicle upgrades. I showed you all the war gear, all the way up to the chaos rewards, I believe. And now, today, we're going to take a look at the various psychic powers available in second edition. I wanted to finish off the cards I had in this binder, and then what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to whip out my second edition starter box, which right now just has all the tokens, templates, and I believe the warp deck, which allowed you to use these psychic powers. So I'm going to give you a little rundown of how the psychic phase used to work. It was much more convoluted than our current psychic phase in 8th edition. It was almost a different card game on its own that you were sort of playing alongside your game of Warhammer 40,000. But as you can see here, there are plenty of psychic powers. There is stuff for every single race in the game. And I believe the rest of this binder should just be psychic powers. Yep, it sure is. So, let's start by taking a look at the Adeptus psychic powers. So, as we looked through the Dark Millennium book in a past video, I'll also put that up at the top of the screen for you guys to be able to click on if you haven't watched that. That supplement really expanded the rules for the psychic phase. There of course was some basic rules in the starter set, but the Dark Millennium set really expanded and codified the psychic phase for second edition, making it, I guess, completing it in a way. And that didn't come out till like a year after the starter set actually came out. So even though I jumped in '96, so both sets had been out for a couple of years by the time I started playing the game. I suppose there were those who probably started in Rogue Trader and what have you, and ended up playing without all of these beautiful cards for about a year until they came out with an expansion, but there it was. So, let's just take a look at how the psychic powers used to work back then. Now, as you can see here, every psychic power has a range, of course, much like they do nowadays, and then the Force 2 or Force 1 that you see here, Force 3, that was how many of the Force cards you needed to fuel that power. Okay? It wasn't like it is now where you just take 2d6 and you have to roll higher than its casting value, and then the other person gets to roll 2d6, and as long as they roll higher than you, they dispel it. It doesn't work like that back in this edition. What happened was you were dealt a number of Force cards, and then you use those Force cards to fuel your spells, and in those Force cards were various different ways to either slow down a spell or completely stop a spell. So if your enemy didn't have one of those cards, like the Nullify Psychic Power card or whatever, then there was nothing they could do to stop it. Even if they So it was really up to the gods, you know what I mean? There really was a huge level of chance to it, and in fact what powers you could even use were random most of the time. You would take, say, so your Space Marine Librarian would have access to Adeptus powers, and he would have access to Librarian powers, and then you would take these two decks, you would shuffle them together. Actually, in fact, you would have them as separate decks, because as I showed you in the Dark Millennium book, they had primary powers and tertiary powers, and so I believe your Psyker had to have at least one from his primary discipline, and then you could deal the rest from your tertiary discipline, and of course you dealt as many psychic powers as they had psychic mastery levels. So, you know, your little primary Psyker, mastery level 1, a Eldrad Ulthran would be mastery level 4, right? Making sense? Cool. And just to finish off the explanation, I suppose, in Nicole's notes version, for the Force cards, the Warp card deck, that I will show you guys later in the video, You rolled a number of d6s equal to the number of psychers that were on the table. And so there were 3 psychers on the table. You'd roll 3d6s, and that's how many force cards get dealt to each player. Makes perfect sense, right? And then those were used to fuel these spells, or dispel them, or what have you, or nullify them. I guess they were called in this fantasy. They called them dispel. In this, they called them nullify, but whatever. Tomato, tomato, right? So let's take a look at these powers and exactly what they are. So we have the Carmine Assassin. Engulfing and crushing, and the victim rolls under, so a toughness test. And if it's failed, they are killed regardless of how many wounds they have. No armor saves. Carmine Assassin may also be used to attack a single crewman of a vehicle, but if it is enclosed, you have to roll 2d6 and pick the lowest when attempting to roll under its toughness. That's interesting. So basically you're forcing the guy to have a toughness test, and his head explodes. That could come in handy. It's amazing if we actually brought some of these cards into the current edition, how amazingly overpowered they would be. Again, you got to realize in 2nd edition that it wasn't about balance, guys. It was about narrative. It was really about narrative. So there wasn't as much of a tournament scene. At least I don't think there was back then, like there is now. So these cards are kind of just fun. Let's take a look at displacement. Psychic power enables a psyker to transport a friendly squad across the battlefield. So this is sort of like the jump nowadays with the orcs. Affected troops are swathed in energy and disappear, reappearing seconds later after the location. Troops may be moved 3d6 inches, ignoring interfering models, buildings, and obstacles. Troops may be moved onto a roof, rocky pinnacle, or other elevation. Displacement may be used to move troops into hand-to-hand combat. Ooh, that's interesting. In which case they fight in the next combat round and count as charging. May not be used to move enemy troops or models. Well, fair enough. So yeah, it's basically to jump, but way better, because you could actually move them into hand-to-hand combat. Actually, I guess it is sort of equivalent, because now you would teleport them and then they would assault. Because you do the assault movement now in the charge phase, they call it, the charge sub-phase anyway. It used to be that you actually charged in your movement phase, so there was no shooting and charging, guys, back in this edition. You literally doubled your movement to be able to charge and gave up your shooting, unless of course you had a pistol and stuff which could be fired in combat, but there was no shooting and then charging. That was a big thing that they changed with the 3rd edition of the rules. Moving on to Hellfire. A mighty pillar of fire bursts from the ground and engulfs everything in flames. The player places a special 2-inch radius Hellfire template on the table, and within 24 inches of the Psyker, the template represents the area covered by a raging flames. Each model touched by this Hellfire template suffers a Strength 4 hit. The template may be left on the tabletop. The template blocks line of sight. A model that touches it will suffer a Strength 4 hit. Hellfire template which is left lasts until it is nullified or a Hellfire power is used again. So you can't have multiples of them running around. But it does stay if you decide not to use it again in a future turn. That's pretty cool. Onto a sail, the Psyker unleashes his powers against a single model within 24 inches. The model is flung about in a series of blows as a giant invisible assailant. The player can move the model 6 inches in any direction, even into hand-to-hand combat, or onto a blast marker. Ew, so cast this and then throw the guy onto it. That's pretty cool. Provided terrain doesn't entirely block movement. Chooses its facing, the attacker will knock models out of Overwatch. A sail will not move a vehicle around, but will cause a moving vehicle to go out of control. Ooh. It's interesting. In the next movement phase, d6 of 4, 5, or 6. That's kind of neat. So literally it's like there's an invisible man just like punching the dude all over the place. Cool. Machine curse. Here's something we're kind of familiar with, I guess. The Psyker calls upon his powers to pronounce a curse of the machine spirit on his enemies. On his 2-inch radius machine curse template, anywhere 24 inches of the Psyker. See, they keep using these 2-inch templates. It actually gave you a whole bunch of these little 2-inch templates in the Dark Millennium set, and now I understand why. No 2-inch templates in the rules anymore. Hell, no templates in 40k at all anymore. Anything partially or fully under the template will be affected. All ranged weapons affected will be unable to fire. That includes pistols used in close combat. And robots, terminators, dreadnoughts, or vehicles will be unable to move. Ooh. Until the curse is nullified. If an object is taken out of the area of effect, it will start working again, and any troops fire into or through the area without penalty. The machine curse remains in play until it is nullified or the psyker is killed. Place this card on the target at the edge of the table to show it is in play. Cool. So yeah, that Dreadnought, I don't want him to move anymore, so I'm just going to place this little template right on his head there, and yeah, you can just keep him there for a while. Lightning Arc. With a crack of a thunderbolt of searing lightning leaps from 24 inches from the Psyker's palms and strikes the first model on its path. The target sustains a strength 6 hit, causing not 1, but D3 wounds. If the target is killed by the bolt, the Psyker can cause a hit another model within 6 inches, inflicting another strength 6 hit, causing D3 wounds. Once the model is killed, the Psyker can strike another, and so on, up to a total of 6 hits in succession. If a vehicle's armor is penetrated by a lightning arc, the Psyker can cause it to strike another model within 6 inches or a different location on the same vehicle, up to a total of 6 hits. Cool. So you kill a model, it moves on. You kill another model, it moves on. Now you don't have to kill a vehicle for it to move on. You have to at least penetrate. And I think the smart way to go would be to continue to hit the same model until it's, or continue to hit the same vehicle until it's dead. There you go, that's pretty cool. I like that power, I wish that still existed. The gate. The Psyker opens a gate through the warp. Take the 2 special gate markers and place them anywhere 18 inches of the Psyker. The 2 markers represent either end of a tunnel through reality. Any models which move onto the gate markers disappear instantaneously and reappear out of the other gate marker. Models expend no movement being transported between the gates. And may charge or run through them as normal. Only models small enough to get through the gate may use it, so no vehicles, etc. can pass through. The gate remains in play until it is nullified or the Psyker using it is killed. Place the card of the gate mark at the edge of the table shows in play. Now we're into the Librarian psychic powers. Cool, cool, cool. So this one is actually one of the Adeptus powers. We'll finish the Adeptus powers off. Psyker opens his mind to sense and presence of all enemies within 36 inches. All hidden enemy models within range are detected automatically, and the Psyker communicates their position to his comrades. If any enemy Psykers are within range, the player can examine his opponent's hand of warp cards. Ooh, he can also look at 1 random chosen psychic power card of each enemy Psyker in range. So actually that's something I didn't mention about the psychic phase. Even though you deal your powers randomly, you do actually keep them secret. You keep them face down until you actually use it. You don't want your opponent to know what psychic powers you have. But of course this, I guess, allows you to take a look at that. Also your warp deck too. So you know, you rolled your 2d6, you got your 11 cards, you got them here in your hand. You got a bunch of force cards and some nullifies and stuff like that. You want to keep those face down until you actually use them. Because if your opponent knows that you have 3 nullify cards, he might be more wary to use his powerful powers first, knowing that you can just nullify them. Anyway, Prescience. Here's something we're familiar with. This has been around for a few editions. The psychic power enables the librarian to look forward in time and predict the outcome of his actions. Though, of course, he is not always entirely accurate. From the moment the psychic power is used, the beginning of the next psychic phase, the librarian may re-roll any of his failed dice rolls, and this includes to hit rolls, damage rolls, armor saves, leadership tests, and so on. Wow, that is way better than Prescience is nowadays. But only the librarian gets to do it. That's interesting. This card should be placed next to the librarian or face up on the table edge, indicates play. Taken back in the librarian's hand at the start of the next psychic phase. Cool. So nowadays we got the reroll of 1s, I think, in Prescience. Actually, I think in 8th it's a +1 to your hit rolls, or is it re-rolling your hit rolls? I can't remember. I think it's +1 to hit for everybody. This allows the librarian to re-roll any dice he bloody well pleases. This is actually more like the lucky stick on the orcs back in 7th there. Neat. That's cool anyway. The salamander. Let's see what that salamander does. The librarian draws on the terrifying legends of the chapter's history to create a monstrous, spectral creature. The manifestation shoots forward, crackling and spitting in bursts of a trail of destruction in its path. The player draws a line 5d6 from the librarian. Every model crossed by the line suffers a strength 5 hit, causing 1 wound. Any squads suffering 1 or more casualties from the salamander must take a break test. Basically a giant like warp dragon shoots out and like scares the crap out of everybody. That's pretty neat. Psychic shield, what do? The librarian conjures a shield of psychic energy to protect himself. Should the librarian subsequently suffer 1 or more wounds from either shooting or close combat, the shield will absorb and negate each wound on a d6 roll of a 3. So basically a 3-up invulnerable save. Rolling 1d6 per wound caused, obviously, yep, so it's literally a 3-up unmodified save. If the librarian is attacked by a psychic power which either causes wounds or kills him outright, then the psychic shield will save him on a d6. Oh, so if it's one of the like insta-kill shots, then it'll only save you on a 4. That's interesting. When used to save against a psychic power, the shield is automatically nullified. The shield is automatically nullified if the save is successful. Once used, the shield remains in play until nullified or the librarian is killed. This card may be placed with the librarian on the edge of the table. Yeah, fair enough. So that's kind of neat. If you're shooting bolters at him, he gets a 3-up invulnerable save. If you're shooting... We looked through the war gear cards and a lot of the stuff that like kills you no matter how many wounds you have. He'll get a 4-up. And if you're using a psychic power against him... Well, I guess it's a 4-up. Okay, neat. Okay, but it can't use it again after that. Cool. Anyway, teleportation. The librarian takes on a bright glow which suddenly flashes into blinding light. When the light fades, he has disappeared. The librarian reappears 46 inches away as a bright glow which flares into a sudden flash. Teleportation can be used to carry the librarian into hand-to-hand combat in the case he fights as normal in the next combat phase, having counting as charging. So sort of like the other one that we saw in the Adeptus powers there, except you're only teleporting the librarian, not another unit. So that's neat. Now, I'm not sure why this one's a different color. It is actually a librarian power, which is kind of weird. I'll bet that these powers all came probably in the Dark Millennium set, and these ones came in the starter set. I don't know, or vice versa. Or maybe it's just a misprint, I don't know. But I have duplicates of it here. So it probably came in the starter set. It is possible also, though, that they duplicated them in the Dark Millennium set, just to make sure that you had all of them. But either way, if the duplicate is that color too, then I imagine it's not some kind of misprint, and I'm not really sure why it's a different color, but that doesn't change the content of the card. So the librarian draws upon his inner reserves of strength to fortify himself and those about him against psychic attack. Psychic attacks against the librarian and any models within 6 inches of him are automatically nullified, unless they roll the librarian's master level on a d6, higher than the librarian's master level. That's interesting. So the highest master level being 4, if you roll a 5 or a 6, strength of mind means nothing. Okay, that's something. That's something. It gives you 2/3 of a chance of nullifying any power that's directed at him. That's kind of cool. So if you don't have any nullifies in your hand, and you know the enemy is going to be using some crap in their next turn, you use this power on your librarian and his surrounding marines. Strength of mind remains in play until it is nullified or the librarian is killed. There you go. This card may be placed with the librarian at the edge of the table. Blah, blah, blah. Smite. There's something that everybody gets access to in the current edition. Obviously, it just causes mortal wounds in the current edition. Let's see what it does in second edition. The Psyker unleashes a devastating psychic attack on the area within 24 inches. The player places the 2-inch smite template anywhere on the table within 24 inches of the librarian. The template represents the area being assaulted by waves of potent psychic energy. Each model covered by the template is hit. Any model partially covered by the template on a d6 roll of 4, 5, or 6. Yeah, of course, just like partials are in this edition. If a vehicle is hit by smite, one randomly selected crewman will be affected. Models hit must pass a leadership test on a D6, on 2d6 with a -2 modifier to their leadership characteristic. If the test is failed, the victim dies immediately, regardless of how many wounds it has. Armor save throws are do not protect against smite. Ooh. So damn, it's just like an instant kill. You do a leadership test, you fail the leadership test, you die. Wow. That's super powerful, actually. If you could target a character with that, that would just be disgusting. Iron Arm. The librarian casts Iron Arm on himself and any single model within 3 inches. Or any single model within 3 inches. A flow of powerful psychic energy rushes over and through the subject, infusing him with power. The model's toughness and strength are doubled up to a maximum of 10. Holy crap. He can fight normally, but his movement characteristic is halved, rounding up. The subject also gains an additional armor save throw of a 4, 5, and 6, which is rolled before the normal armor save. Ooh, sort of like, oh, that's kind of cool. So you got to get through that, then through his normal armor. Huh. The extra armor save is not affected by weapon saving throw so it's unmodified too? Holy crap. No matter how they're sustained, including those inflicted by psychic powers. Place this card next to the model or put it face up on the table edge, blah, 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 blah. Once used, Iron Arm remains in play for the rest of the game until it is nullified or until the subject is slain. Iron Arm may be used on only one model at a time. Fair enough. You just start casting it on all your psychers. Everybody is Superman! Alright, and the final librarian power I've got here is the Quickening. The librarian creates an accelerated time field around himself or another model within 6 inches. Excuse me. Making it seem that the subject speeds up to a blur, while everything else is hardly moving at all. The subject doubles its movement, initiative, and attacks, as long as Quickening is in play, and can fire twice in the shooting phase if it doesn't run or charge in the movement phase. Once used, Quickening remains in play until nullified or the librarian is killed. This card may be placed within the with the librarian on the edge of the table. Yeah, it always says that. More or less like you're not turning it up right until you're using it, and if it stays in play, you're continuing to use it. But anyway, this basically is just making him super fast, doubling his attacks and stuff. That is nuts. His attacks, his movement, and his initiative. So if you're initiative 4, you're now initiative 8. If you have 3 attacks, you now have 6 attacks. And doubling movement would be really disgusting in this, actually, because your normal run or charge would be double your movement. So I think your standard Space Marine was like movement 4 or something like that. And charging would be 8. So that means if you use this power on a model, they'd be charging like 16 inches. That's absolutely disgusting. Alright, moving on to the next discipline. What do I actually have here? I think it's Inquisition. Yep, Inquisition. And then I've got 2 squat powers here as well, which is interesting because the squats, so this was the edition where the squats kind of got phased out. Of course, they were included in the core set because they were obviously a large part of the Rogue Trader first edition of the rules. But they never got a codex in second edition, so this is basically where they killed them. But personally, I'm a big squat fan. I have a squat army that I converted a long time ago. I haven't finished painting it all, or else I would have it in my battle reports for you guys. But getting off topic, the squats were still in this edition, and I believe their elders were their psychers, so there's actually 4 squat powers I'll be going over today. But right now, let's focus on the Inquisition. So Vortex, I guess it would be similar to your Vortex grenades or what have you. That we saw even in 4th edition Apocalypse. They released that cool little dome template, which was kind of neat. But in this edition, there was actually a Vortex template, which was just your standard cardboard template. And of course, a sphere of utter darkness opens between the outstretched hands of the Psyker and widens into a swirling vortex. The vortex can be sent in any direction and will move forward, destroying all in its path. The vortex is represented by a special vortex template. Place the template on the table and move it to indicate the path of the vortex. The vortex moves 3d6 immediately, and anything touched by it is affected by the vortex grenade. Is affected as by a vortex grenade. Yeah, so in most cases this means instant annihilation. At the beginning of each subsequent turn, roll the vortex chart as normal in the vortex grenade. The vortex lasts until it is nullified, dissipates, or leaves the battlefield. While the vortex template is in play, this power may not be used again, so you can't have multiple vortexes running around, of course. That would just be disgusting. Holocaust. That's an interesting name for an Inquisitor psychic power. Psyker releases his mighty powers in a mighty conflagration of flames ranging out of his body. Every living creature, friend or foe within 12 inches of the Psyker takes a strength 4 hit from the flames. After damage has been assessed, the Psyker must pass a leadership test in order to stop the Holocaust. If he fails or decides to continue the Holocaust, he suffers a wound as the flames start to consume his body, and assuming he's still alive, the Holocaust card remains in play, scoring another strength 4 hit on every living creature within 12 inches at the start of the next psychic phase. After the damage has been done, the Psyker makes another test to stop the Holocaust again, the same effects if he fails. While the Holocaust remains in play, the Psyker may not use warp cards and may not use any other psychic powers. If he passes the leadership test to control the Holocaust, the card is taken back into the hand as normal. So literally, he unleashes a bunch of crazy demon flames and then has a very hard time stopping them. So that's interesting. Wow, it's like he literally has to stop his own psychic power before he can do anything else. Weird. But insanely deadly. If you got your Psyker into the middle of an enemy army, you could cause a lot of crap with that card. That is nuts. Destroy Demon, appropriate for the Inquisition. The Psyker hurls his powers against a demon in an attempt to banish it back into the warp. The Destroy Demon power travels up to 24 inches and strikes the first target in its path. The Psyker rolls 2d6 and adds his mastery level to the result. The demon rolls 1d6 and adds his current number of wounds to the result. It's interesting. If the Psyker score beats the demon's score, the demon is instantly destroyed. If the scores are drawn, the demon loses half of his remaining wounds. Wow, rounding down. If the Psyker's score is lower, the Destroy Demon power does not work. If the demon's score is twice that of the Psyker or more, the Psyker suffers D3 wounds from the feedback. Yikes. That could be problematic. But wickedly narrative nonetheless. So, Storm of Wrath. The Psyker unleashes a mighty psychic storm of terrifying intensity which affects all enemies within 12 inches. All tests on 2d6 before they can move or charge. Enemy vehicles will go out of control on a 5 or 6. On a d6 when they move, all enemies shooting within or into the area suffer a -2 modifier to hit. Friendly models are completely unaffected. The Storm of Wrath remains in play until it is nullified or until the Psyker is killed. Blah, same as every other card says. That's kind of neat. I like it. Aura of Fire. An aura of flickering flames forms around the Psyker. The aura of fire will negate any wounds suffered by the Psyker on a d6 roll of 4, 5, or 6, so a 4 upon modified save. In hand-to-hand combat, any wounds saved by the means of aura of fire is rebounded against the model that struck it. Cool. Causing a wound for each wound saved. Neat. Place the card next to the Psyker model in turn and face it up, blah, 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 blah. Once the aura of fire affects the rest of the game until it is nullified, Psyker is slain, yeah. They said that in every other card. So that's kind of neat. The 4 up on modified save that literally hits your opponent's back if they try to hit you in close combat. Cool. Purge Psyker. The Psyker assaults one of the enemy Psykers in a battle of wills. The enemy Psyker rolls a d6 and adds his mastery level to the roll. The attacking Psyker rolls a 2d6 and adds his mastery level to the roll. The highest dice roll to the highest dice roll. Oh, okay. So you just get better chances. It's not actually 2. If the enemy Psyker's score is lower, he loses and suffers 1 wound for every point he lost by. If the scores are tied, the enemy's score is higher, the Purge Psyker attacks has no effect unless the defender's score is double the attacker's. If this happens, they suffer D6 wounds from the psychic feedback. Holy crap, that's even worse than the Destroy Demon if you fail. Crazy. So more or less the same thing as the Destroy Demon, except this time it's your leadership rather than the number of wounds. Interesting. Scourging. Crackling bolts of power lash out from the Psyker's fingers up to 24 inches, striking the first target in its path. The target suffers D3 strength 4 hits and must pass a leadership test or be stunned. and unable to do anything until the next psychic phase. If this happens, leave the card next to the affected model as the remainder and take it back at the beginning of the next psychic phase. Demons struck by the Scouring suffer D3 Strength 8 rather than Strength 4. Ooh. Be a pretty easy way to bring down a Bloodthirster. So, now we're going to move on to the squat powers, and like I say, there's only 4 of them, so this will be pretty quick. Looks here like Ancestor Lords are actually their Psychers. That's interesting. I thought they had like Elders or whatever, but I guess that was Rogue Trader. No, I guess they were Living Ancestors in Rogue Trader. Yeah, they were called Living Ancestors. So this is an Ancestor Lord, which is interesting. The Ancestor Lord weaves a powerful mental barrier around himself and those nearby. The Ancestor Lord and all friendly models within 12 inches gain a saving throw of 5 or 6 on a d6 against psychic attacks. Only against psychic attacks, okay. Mental Fortress remains in play until it is nullified or the Ancestor Lord is killed. Yeah. Place the card face up. Okay. 5 up on modified save against psychic powers. Cool. Hammer of Fury. The Ancestor Lord unleashes a mighty psychic hammer blow against his foes, smashing them back with supernatural force. All enemy models within 9 inches of the Ancestor Lord are blasted backwards 3 inches directly away from him, and suffer a Strength 5 hit. Vehicles suffer a Strength 5 hit to each location. Wow, to every location. That's kind of cool. Moving enemy vehicles will go out of control in the next movement phase. Models with a strength of 6 or more will not be driven back by the Hammer of Fury. The strength of 6 or more. Huh. Though will suffer the Strength 5 hit as normal. Cool. Moving on to the remaining 2 squat powers, the Tyranid powers, and then we're going to start into Eldar powers. So let's take a look at the remaining 2 squat powers just to finish it off. We've got a Force Dome, which may be used anywhere within 24 inches of the Ancestor Lord. A giant dome of energy bursts from the ground, takes a special Force Dome template, and place it within range. The Force Dome prevents all movement across its edge, trapping models inside. The dome stops models from seeing, shooting, and using psychic powers through it. Cool. At the end of each of their own movement phases, models in contact with the dome can try to destroy it by rolling under their strength on 3d6. Close combo weapons may not be used. Close combo weapons may be used, sorry. Vehicles can destroy the dome by rolling 2d6 and scoring equal to or under the strength characteristic of their RAM value. Neat. If they fail, they take damage as if they had collided with a vehicle of equal size. The Force Dome remains in play until it's nullified. The trap models break free. Blah 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 blah. This card should be placed with a target. Yep. Okay. It's kind of cool. Literally just like that enemy, whoom, there's a dome around them now, and they can't go anywhere until somebody destroys that freaking dome. That is a nuisance. Domination, the final squat power here. The Ancestor Lord turns his immense willpower on the mind of a single enemy model and takes over his body for a moment. That's neat. Huh. That's kind of like that new Genestealer cult power. But anyway. Player nominates a single model in range as this victim. The victim must pass a leadership test with -2 modifier to resist the power of domination. If the model fails, the player can force it to perform one action immediately. This could be to make a normal move, fire a weapon, throw a grenade, etc. Any firing normal rules apply as regards targeting, line of sight, etc. Of course. Vehicles crew can be targeted with domination, but those in enclosed vehicles count as having a leadership of 10. Exposed vehicle crew test on their basic leadership. So, against a predator, they have a much higher leadership than they do against an orc buggy. A dominated model cannot be forced to kill itself. Well, obviously. I mean, shoot yourself. That would be silly. So, cool. So, literally, it's like, oh, that last cannon there? Yeah, I'm going to get him to shoot his buddy next to him. Huh? Alright, on to Tyranid Psychic Powers. So, this is interesting to note that I haven't noticed this on the other ones, but this one has a force 1, 2, 3 instead of a... oh, in fact, this one has In the Eldar power, a 1 to 2, a 1 to 3. So that's interesting. I haven't seen that in the other powers. At least I didn't notice it in the other powers. Yeah, no, they all have solid values. Let's read the card and find out why it has a variable value like that. The horror fills the minds of living creatures with visions of their own worst fears. It affects every squad and character model within 6 to 18-inch radius of the Hive Tyrant, Patriarch, or Magus. Cool. The radius of effect of the horror is centered on the user and varies according to how many force cards are expended. There you go. So 1 force card makes a 6-inch radius, 2 force cards 12-inch, and 3 force cards equals 18, respectively. The affected squad and model must take an immediate break test, even if they have already taken a break test in this turn. The horror has no effect on the creatures which cannot be broken or which are not living creatures, obviously. So it does not affect demonic targets, vehicles, robots, or dreadnoughts, for example. That makes sense. You can't cause fear in a creature that is made of fear, right? Demons, for example, are literally made of the stuff of dreams. So, obviously, that makes sense. And robots don't have brains. Well, Psychic Scream. A great scream of psychic energy from the hive mind scores across the battlefield, causing psychers to writhe in agony or driving them insane. Every enemy psyker within 36 inches of the Hive Tyrant, Patriarch, or Magus must roll 2d6. If a psyker rolls equal to or under his toughness characteristic, he is unaffected by the Psychic Scream. If he rolls over his toughness, but equal or to or under his leadership, he is stunned by the scream and incapable of using any warp card. Wow, that's weird. So you gotta roll a toughness test to be fine on 2d6, not 1. That's gonna be real hard to do. But if you roll higher than your toughness but under your leadership, see how complicated it was back then? I mean, that's not too hard to get your head around, but still, it's like you're literally rolling one test on multiple different characteristics. It's really strange. He is incapable of using any warp cards, taking any actions until the start of the next psychic phase. Stunned psychers fight in hand-to-hand combat at weapon skill 1. Yikes. If a psyker rolls over his leadership, he is driven insane by the scream and takes no further part in the battle, counting as a casualty. For victory points. Nuts. Absolutely nuts. That would be a disgusting one to use. Yikes. Hypnotic Gaze. Alright. Part of the awesome power of the hive mind reaches out through its minions to paralyze foe with a terrible gaze. Hypnotic Gaze can be used on a brood of Tyranid warriors, gene stealers, or stealer hybrids within 18 inches of the Hive Tyrant, Patriarch, or Magus. Roll a leadership test on 2d6 for every model within a 6, which is within 6 inches and visible to one of the brood. Any models which fail are paralyzed and can't perform any actions as long as the Hypnotic Gaze remains in play. Place the affected models on their side as a reminder. Paralyzed models are hit automatically in hand-to-hand combat, but psychers may continue to use their powers. Okay, interesting. Hypnotic Gaze remains in play until it is nullified or the brood is destroyed. Any affected models which end up more than 6 inches away from the brood are at the start of either player's turn recover automatically. Right. So if you move that unit of Tyranids that you centered the power from away from the models, and they're like, oh, finally, they're gone. This card should be placed within the target or with the target or at the edge of the table to show it's in play. Yeah. Catalyst. A surge of psychic energy from the hive mind impels its brood forward. The creatures are possessed of such unnatural vitality that they shrug off the most hideous damage as they swarm towards the foe. Catalyst can be used on a single brood within 18 inches of the Hive Tyrant, Patriarch, or Magus. The brood becomes frenzied for as long as the catalyst remains in play. See the psychology rules in the Warhammer 40,000 rulebook for full details of frenzy. Right. So basically they get frenzied. Cool. Additionally, the brood takes its armor saving throw on a 2d6, just like models wearing Terminator armor. For example, Gene Stealers would need to roll a 5 or more on 2d6 to make their armor save while Catalyst remains in play. That is disgusting. Catalyst remains in play until it is nullified or the Brute is destroyed. The card should be placed with the Brute at the edge of the table, blah, 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 blah. Wow, so Tyranid powers are actually really freaking good. And definitely boost your units massively. That is huge. So now we're moving on to the Eldar, the Smeldar. So the first one we've got is Guide. The Warlock reaches into the mind of a nearby Eldar and guides him to fire his weapons. Select any single Eldar model within 12 inches. The affected model can immediately fire its weapons up to double its normal range and will hit automatically. You don't see that in the rules anymore. Just select the target and calculate damage for the shot as normal. Well, so just like that guy? Yeah, he's hit. Using Guide with a pistol or basic weapon requires the expenditure of 1 force card. 2 force cards are necessary to fire ancient weapons, heavy weapons, or support weapons. The weapon may only fire once, so even weapons with sustained fire or multiple shots can only score a single hit. Okay, that makes it a little less OP, but it's still pretty damn good. This is interesting. So this said Warlock specifically in the description. This one says Farseer only. And in fact, I've got a couple more on the other page here that are Farseer only. So that's interesting that they've differentiated, because the Tyranid ones listed all of the Psykers in the army being able to use it, whereas these ones seem to be Warlock or Farseer specific. That's interesting to note. Battle Fate. The Farseer examines the skeins of probability. Skeins? I've never seen that word before. Correct my pronunciation in the comments if you want, guys. S-K-E-I-N-S. The skeins of probability. Try to determine which courses of action will give a single Eldar squad or vehicle the best chances of success. As a result of +1 modifiers applied to all the squads or vehicles shooting to hit rolls and combat scores in close combat. The affected unit or face up on the table edge to indicate it is in play. Battle Fate remains in play until the beginning of the next psychic phase, when it is returned to the Farseer's hand and may be used again. Cool. That's neat. That's sort of like I was saying, prescience is now. You get +1 to hit. Cool. Executioner, this is another variable force card level. Strands of incandescent energy stream from the Warlock's outstretched fingertips and weave themselves into a monstrous growing form near a single enemy within 18 inches. The form of the psychic projection of the Warlock himself, which immediately springs forward to attack the enemy in hand-to-hand combat. Each force card used to energize this power allows the Warlock to attack one enemy model. Fight out the hand-to-hand combat immediately. The Warlock counts as charging. If he is fighting more than one opponent, the normal rules for multiple combats do not apply. If the Warlock loses any of the combats, he suffers no damage, but the Executioner power is nullified immediately. Cool. So you can attack up to 3 enemies, depending on how many force cards you use. And if I remember correctly, Warlocks were close combat monsters, because Witchblades have pretty much been gross in every single edition. Moving on. Mind War. The Farseer reaches out and blasts the mind of a single enemy model within range. The Farseer rolls 4d6 plus 1d6 for each force card he uses. Okay, that's why it's a variable 1 to 3 as well, to energize the power. Mind War automatically inflicts 1 wound on the target for each 6 the Farseer rolls, with no armor saving throws possible. Mind War may be used on a vehicle crewman, but the Farseer only rolls 2d6 plus 1d6 for each force card used. Instead of 4d6, interesting. If the Farseer uses Mind War on an enemy Psyker, he must take 1 random psychic power card from the Psyker for each 6 he rolls. Wow, that's pretty cool. That could be really gross for the level 1 guys. The powers are discarded and may not be used again for the remainder of the game. Enemy Psykers has less than the required number of psychic power cards. He loses all of his psychic powers and suffers D3 wounds. Wow. So if I fuel that with 3 force cards, I could target a level 1 Psyker. I could not only take away his power, but I can make him suffer an additional 2d3 wounds. Yikes. That's gross against small level Psykers. Well, it'd probably be gross against big level Psykers too, because even taking Mastery level 4, doing it against a Mastery level 4 guy, you can literally take away 3 of his 4 psychic powers. Gross. Moving on. Doom. Here's one we're familiar with. The Farseer searches for the thread of destiny that spells the destruction of a single enemy model within range. Once a Doom has been placed on a model, all hits caused by either shooting or hand-to-hand combat or psychic attacks automatically wound. Yikes. You don't need to roll. In addition, any wounds inflicted on the model are automatically doubled. So a hit from a bolt gun will inflict 2 wounds, for example. Armor saving throws, but they automatically wound. You're doubling the damage too? Holy crap, that is disgusting. For example, armor saving throws are unaffected. Vehicles cannot be doomed. The card should be placed by the target or face up on the table edge. Blah, 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 blah. Remains in play until it is nullified, the target is slain, or the Farseer decides to end it. Okay, fair enough. Eldritch Storm. I'm sorry, Doom. That is just absolutely disgusting. Like, not only are you automatically wounding, but you get to double the damage of any weapons that are shielded. Yikes. It only requires 1 force card to use it. That is OP. That is totally OP. Anyway. Glad this edition's in the past. The Warlock... Sorry for the next one. Eldritch Storm. The Warlock conjures a howling storm of psychic energy which sends troops flying. Place the Eldritch Storm template anywhere within 24 inches of the Warlock. Roll a scatter dice template. Roll a scatter dice for any models more than half under the template. Sorry, I got distracted there. If an arrow is rolled, the model is flung in the direction indicated to the storm's edge and may not move or shoot in the next turn. If a hit is rolled, the model suffers a strength 3 hit and is flung to the storm's edge as above. Vehicles in the storm will go out of control when they next move. The card should be placed next to the Warlock or face up on the table edge to indicate it is in play. The storm template remains in play until the Warlock is killed or wishes to end it. While the Eldritch Storm remains in play, nothing can move, see, or shoot through it. Wow. That is incredibly complicated, but wicked cool nonetheless. Moving on to Destructor. Destructor! The Warlock unleashes a devastating surge of psychic power. Place a special Destructor template so that its narrow end touches the Warlock and its broad end covers the target. So I imagine that's a flame template. Anything more than half under the template is hit unless it can roll equal to or under its initiative. So an initiative test, basically. Models hit suffer a strength 6 hit with no armor save possible. Yikes. Vehicles and buildings are hit automatically and the Destructor Bolt is stopped if it strikes a vehicle or building. Otherwise, the template moves 12 inches forward in the same direction at the start of each subsequent psychic phase. Huh. It remains in play until the Warlock decides to end it, taking the card back into his hand. The Warlock is killed, the Destructor is nullified, or until the template eventually leaves the battlefield. Fair enough. Cool, that's kind of neat, actually. Like, fire a flame template, and then it just starts to move forward until it's either off the table or you decide to basically not use it anymore. It's kind of cool. And the final Eldar power, Fortune. Fortune. The Warlock summons protective energies about himself and the Eldar nearby. All Eldar within 8 inches of the Warlock get a +2 bonus on their saving throws. Wow, that's big. As long as the power is in effect. Fortune has no effect on vehicles or dreadnoughts, only living Eldar. This card should be placed next to the Warlock or face up on the table edge to indicate it's in play. Fortune remains in play until it is nullified, the Warlock is killed, or he voluntarily ends it. Cool. Alright, moving on to the Orc powers. This is going to be fun, because Orcs are silly. So the first one on the list is Cop Dis. The Weird Boy hurls a torrent of psychic energy which travels up 24 inches and strikes the first model in its path. The model is hurled back d6 plus 1 inches. If the model hits anything in its move, it's halted, and both models take a strength 5 hit. Cop Dis can only be used on area effect templates such as Vortex, Hellfire, and Plasma Burst. Huh. If an area effect template is moved, it will score a hit on anything it moves over. Ooh. That's pretty cool. So either you can shoot back a model that's getting too close to you, or if somebody is cheese enough to use one of those Vortex or any of the other templates we talked about, you can really move it away from your dudes. That's actually super handy. The next one is called Brain Bursta. A violent bolt of power erupts from the Weird Boy's sloping forehead and rockets up to 24 inches across the battlefield in a dead straight line. The first model the boat touches is overloaded with orc power and must roll under its toughness on a d6 or its head explodes. A toughness test. Head explosions will always kill the victim regardless of the number of wounds they have, so it insta-kills. That's pretty gross. Armor saving throws do not protect against the Brain Bursta. Vehicles hit by the Brain Bursta suffer a hit to one randomly determined crewman who must roll to survive as above. Cool. That could be very useful against enemy characters, because literally you don't get an armor save and you have to roll less than your toughness. So, yeah. You fail the toughness test and your guy is just dead, regardless of his armor or his wounds. That would be incredibly useful against Terminators and things like that. Anyway, moving on. Edbutts. The Weird Boy smashes one of the enemy Psychers with an Edbutt of pure Wah power. Both players roll a d6 and add their mastery levels, the respective Psychers to their score. Blah, blah, blah. Can't even talk. If the enemy Psyker loses, he suffers one wound and can't use any psychic powers until his next psychic phase. Though he can continue to use warp cards to nullify. That's good to note. If the scores are drawn or the Weird Boy loses, the Edbutt has no effect. Okay, so it doesn't hurt him back. That's kind of cool. Literally just like headbutts the dude using the Force. On to the next one. This is a Force 3 power, so this must be pretty freaking powerful. It's got a 46-inch range. Let's see what Death Wave does. A glowing wave of psychic power bursts from the Weird Boy's eyes. Place the Death Wave template so that its center touches the Weird Boy, and then move it 46 inches in a straight line away from him. So I'll show you guys that template when we open the box, and it's kind of like a crescent-shaped template you put in front of the guy, and then it's going to shoot forward, right? Any models covered by the template as it moves suffer a hit. Models partially covered are hit on a 4, 5, or 6. Roll a d6 for any models that are hit. On the rolls equal or beats their toughness, they are killed regardless of armor saving throws and how many wounds they have. Vehicles are not affected, but crews are. Each crew member suffers a hit from the Death Wave on a roll of 5 or 6 on a d6. The Death Wave will pass through any target even if it causes no damage. Its progress is not blocked by models, scenery, or buildings, as the psychic energy automatically passes right through them. The Death Wave continues to move 46 inches in the same direction at the start of each subsequent psychic phase. This wave remains in play until it is nullified or eventually leaves the battlefield. Alright, the remaining orc powers here. Wah! As a 3/4. The Weird Boy floods the area with the power of the Wah. All enemy Psychers in range are knocked flat and suffer 1 wound if the orc player can roll higher than their mastery level on a d6. If they're knocked flat, they can't use any more psychic powers until their next psychic phase, though they can continue to use warp cards to nullify blah 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 blah. All orcs and Gretchen within 36 inches of the Weird Boy add 1 to their weapon skill. Yikes. And can re-roll any leadership test they take until the end of the next turn. Wow, that helps. Leave this card face up next to the Weird Boy as a reminder to take it back at the beginning of the next psychic phase. Cool. So not only does that screw with enemy Psychers, but it makes your dudes a lot more courageous. I like it. Duck Crunch. This is pretty cool. This is, if I remember this correctly, this one was like a foot template that you literally like placed. It was literally the shape of like a foot of one of the gods. The weird boy's fevered brain conjures up a huge ectoplasmic vision, and the mighty foot of Gork himself stomps down to squish the enemy into splutchy pancakes. Really? Splutchy? British. Use the special templates to represent the area covered by the foot by placing it over the desired target. Any models under the template are automatically hit unless they can roll under their initiative rating. So an initiative test to get out from under the foot on a d6 and get out of the way. Any models which fail to dodge suffer a strength 10 hit. Ouch. Yeah, that would squish some stuff pretty easy. I'll show you guys that template when we bust open the box later. Moving on to Power Vomit. The weird boy hurls a ball of fluorescent green psychoplasma from his churning innards. Draw a straight line 18 inches from the weird boy. Any models that lie under the line are struck by the Power Vomit and sustain a strength 5 hit. The Power Vomit will pass through any target even if it causes no damage. Its progress is not blocked by models, scenery, or buildings. The psychic energy automatically passes right through them. Cool. So literally like pukes out psychic energy and it hits everything within 18 inches. That's pretty neat. Squish is the final orc power we've got here. The weird boy grunts as he exerts his power on a single model within 24 inches. Glowing lights trap the victim, solidify, constrict, and crush the life out of it. The target suffers 2d6 minus his own strength 5 hits. So 2d6 minus his strength power number of hits at a strength 5 value. Okay. Vehicles deduct their RAM value strength characteristic from the number. Okay, yeah, whatever, same thing. We've got the Chaos powers, and they've given us now in this expansion set powers for the 3 gods, respectively. Obviously, Khorne doesn't have any psychic powers because Khorne hates psychers. He finds it cowardly. So, some of these names we know from future editions. So we'll just start with Slaanesh, because that's who I have in the binder here first. Pavane of Slaanesh, something that still exists today. The Chaos Magus unleashes the corrupting power of his magic against a single enemy squad or model within 24 inches. The victim must roll equal to or under his leadership on 2d6. Excuse me. Which is basically a leadership test. Or be overcome by the psychic power. Beginning to leap and cavort uncontrollably, howling with glee. If the power works, place this card next to the affected model. The models can no longer move or shoot and may not roll any attack dice in hand-to-hand combat, being far too involved in their dancing. The Pavane lasts until it is nullified, until the Magus is slain, or he chooses to end it. Yeah, blah, 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 blah. The Pavane can then be used, and by taking the card back, taking the card back, right. That's pretty neat. You're literally just forcing a guy to like dance around instead of fighting. Again, these things are very narrative, which I really liked about this edition. It was really more so about forging the narrative. Nowadays there's just way too much of a competitive scene, but anyway, it is what it is. So it's funny, we're looking through some of these things we're saying are like super OP, even in the context of 2nd edition. But like I say, it was really just about creating a wicked cool narrative back then. Nowadays it's become super competitive, but I get off topic. I digress. Beam of Slaanesh. A dazzling burst of rainbow light shoots from the Chaos Magus' fingertips to strike the first model in its path. The victim must roll equal to or under his leadership on 3d6. That's interesting. To fight the intense waves of sensation which threaten to overwhelm him. If the victim fails the test, he enters a rapturous, euphoric state which halves all of his characteristics. Ew! Oh god. Oh fuck, that sucks. And makes him subject to the rules of stupidity for the rest of the battle. A successful nullify used on the affected model will bring him to his senses again. Halves all of his characteristics and he becomes stupid. That is disgusting for only Force 2. The next Slaaneshi one, Fleshy Curse. A Force 3 power, the Chaos Magus summons the power of raw psychic energy and directs it on a single living model within 24 inches. The victim must roll equal to or under his toughness on 2d6. That's going to be hard to do. Try to roll under. Take 2d6 and try to roll under 4. It's real hard to do. Otherwise, the curse twists and warps his body into a chaos spawn. Cool! The mindless spawn immediately shambles, crawls, or slithers 2d6 inches in a random direction, rolled on the scatter dice. It will then move 2d6s in a random direction in the compulsory movement of each of its own movement phases. The spawn moves directly over troops in its path, causing a strength 4 hit on any model it touches. The spawn does not fight in hand-to-hand combat and is hit automatically if it's attacked. It cannot be broken and is immune to psychology. The spawn retains its old toughness and number of wounds. Note that a nullify will never revert the spawn back to its original form. Huh. So when they say old toughness, they mean the original model that you targeted. And you can't dispel it. That guy is just going to be a spawn forever. That is crazy. That is really crazy. But it's a Force 3, so I guess that's why they can justify it. That's pretty much as high as it gets, right? Final Slaaneshi power, Acquiescence. The Chaos Magus reaches out a hand overflowing with multicolored light and touches a victim in base-to-base contact with him. He does so, the victim staggers back with an idiotic grin of pleasure on his face. The victim must roll under his initiative on a d6 to avoid the touch. So an initiative test to avoid the touch. If the victim fails to avoid the acquiescence, he enters a rapturous euphoric state which halves all of his characteristics. Again, having all the characteristics, that is disgusting, and makes him subject to the rules of stupidity. Cool, so it's pretty much the same as the other one. Successful nullify brings him back to his senses. So this beam of Slaanesh and this acquiescence are just absolutely gross. Just gross. Yikes, I would hate to have that used against me. So that seems like a really good psychic discipline, actually. Slaanesh is pretty disgusting. Let's see what Tzeentch has to offer. So the first one on this page we've got is Bolt of Change, another one we're used to hearing. The Chaos Magus summons a bolt of raw magical power and hurls it up to 12 inches. Ooh, okay. Not quite as powerful as current, or as it has been in future editions. Striking the first model on its path, the victim must roll equal to or under its toughness on 2d6. Again, try rolling 2d6, guys, and see if you can roll under the toughness of a Space Marine. To resist the power of change, which engulfs him. Otherwise, the magic rips through him, twisting and warping his body in a blur of growth and change. In a matter of moments, the psychic power is spent, leaving nothing but a pile of indescribable slime. Armor does not protect against the Bolt of Change. Vehicles suffer a randomly allocated hit at an armor penetration value of 3d6 plus 6. Actually, that is really good for Force 2. Like, literally, you're forcing him to do a toughness test on 2d6, which, again, like I say, is really hard to do. Otherwise, he just gets ripped to pieces and becomes a puddle. With no armor saves. Man, some of these powers are just absolutely gross. Absolutely gross. You better hope you get some of those nullify cards, eh? So our final page, we've got the rest of the Tzeentch powers and the Nurgle powers. So let's see what else we got from Tzeentch. Pink Fire of Tzeentch. Guttering flames of pink magic spurt from the Chaos Magus's outstretched hands and strike the first model in their path. A model struck by the flickering pink fire of Tzeentch will suffer d6 hits, a strength of 4 plus d6. Strength of 4 plus d6, so it could be anywhere from strength 5 to strength 10. Yikes. Make one roll to determine the strength of all the hits. For Force 1, that is really good. Really good. Next one is Boon of Tzeentch. A Chaos Magus chants appealing to Tzeentch, Lord of Magic, to grant him new magics to destroy his foe. If this psychic power succeeds, the Chaos player can draw 2 more cards from the Warp deck immediately. These cards are added to the Chaos player's current hand of cards dealt to him by the Warp Flux. So literally, you can just spend 1 Force card to get 2 more cards. So I guess that's only really giving you 1 extra. But hey, it could help. Spend 1 Force card to get another one. or another nullify or what have you. Yeah, it's kind of handy. Not super OP. And the final Tzeentch power is Tzeentch's Firestorm. The Chaos Magus launches a fiery mass of flames up to 24 inches to strike the first model in its path. The flames drain away the victim's souls to the capricious realm of Tzeentch, and pink horrors are drawn back by the energy flow. Place the Firestorm template, again I think that's the flame template, over the target. Every model touched by the template suffers a strength 5 hit with no armor saving throws possible. Vehicles touched by the template suffer a strength 5 hit to one randomly determined crewman. For every full 3 wounds inflicted by Tzeentch's Firestorm, a pink horror is created. Wow, that's pretty cool. Place the newly created model in the area of effect by the template. The pink horrors form a new unit under the control of the Tzeentch player. Wow. I guess that's just sort of an early form of summoning. That's wicked cool. That literally, like, you kill the enemies and however many die become pink horrors. For every 3 wounds you get 1 horror. I guess that makes sense, because in this edition too, pink horrors when they died were split into 2 blue horrors. So that actually kind of makes sense, because in a way they have 3 wounds, you know what I mean? They had 1 wound, but then they split into 2 models that you had to kill in the next 2, so it kind of makes sense. So for every 3 guys that die, for every 3 normal Space Marines that die, you get a pink horror. Kind of cool. On your side, not the enemy side. That's wild. So finally, last but not least, Mr. Nurgly. First one is Miasma of Pestilence. A Chaos Magus summons a stinking cloud of pestilence and magically wraps a disease vapors around himself like a monstrous shroud. Any living models within 6 inches of the Magus are affected by a miasma suffer a strength 3 hit as soon as they are within range. Followers and demons of Nurgle are unaffected, obviously. The player's psychic power remains in play until it is nullified, the Chaos Magus is slain, blah-bitty-blah-bitty-blah. Place it next to it, yada yada. That's cool. It's sort of like the Cloud of Flies, or, what's it called now? Nurgle's Rot or something like that. Correct me again if I'm wrong, guys. Next one, Stream of Corruption. This is one, again, we're used to seeing in pretty much every edition. The Chaos Maggot vomits forth a stinking jet of putrid blood, pus, maggots, slime, and other foulness. Place the Stream of Corruption template with the pointed end touching the Chaos Magus model, and the round end over the target, obviously. Any living model, friend or foe, move more than half under the template will be overwhelmed and choked to death by the foulness. Models with a toughness of 7 or greater will not be automatically killed by the stream, but sustain d6 wounds instead. Wow. It just like automatically kills? For Force 2? That's disgusting. Enclosed vehicles are unaffected, obviously. They're enclosed. Ain't getting through the breathing apparatuses of Space Marine Rhino. So that's really good, actually, for Force 2. I mean, it's only the flame template, which is like, what, 8 inches long or whatever, but that's still really freaking good. Better than it has been in later editions. Moving on to Plague Wind, 24-inch range with a Force 3. The Chaos Magus calls down a foetid plague-ridden wind, accompanied by moaning, insane laughter, and other sounds of death and delirium. The hideous plague wind inflicts Nurgle's Rot upon the recipients, a wasting disease which changes its victims into plague bearers. Cool! So Nurgle gets to create demons too. Plague wind can be cast a single living enemy model or squad within 24 inches. The plague wind inflicts 3d6 hits minus the target's toughness. Yikes, it's a lot of hits. Each hit causes a wound on a 4, 5, or 6. For every 3 wounds inflicted, the Plague Wind 1 Plague Bearer is created, just like the Tzeentch one. Forming a new unit within 3 inches of the victim of the Plague Wind. Cool. 3d6 hits minus their toughness. So against a unit of Space Marines, you could be rolling like 14 hits. Yikes. It's actually pretty gross. Aura of Decay. The leering grin of the Chaos Magus bestows a blessing of Nurgle on himself or a single model in base contact with him. the target starts to exude an aura of psychic power so disgusting that it and all models within 3 inches of it lose 1 from their attacks characteristic. Like they're like, ew, that's gross. Oh wait, I'm fighting. As they wrench uncontrollably. Literally, it makes them puke. Followers and demons and Nurgle are unaffected by the power, obviously. The psychic power lasts until it is nullified, until the effect is slain, or the magus decides to stop it, and place the card at the edge of the table, blah 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 blah. So that's it, guys. That is basically all of the cards for the second edition of Warhammer 40,000. So that was all of the psychic powers for the second edition of the rules. I really wanted to show all you guys all the templates and counters and all that kind of stuff as well in this video, but it's already been long enough and we've talked about every single psychic power in the game pretty much at this point. So next week I'm going to be showing you guys all of the templates, all of the counters. I'm going to show you that force deck that fueled all these psychic powers that we saw in today's video. And we're also going to look over all the other little tidbits that came with the second edition starter set and the Dark Millennium box set. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you like these videos, you like my terrain tutorials, you like our battle reports, and all the other hobby content that we come out with, please head to the description below and you can check out our Spreadshirt page where you can buy a t-shirt and that helps us out a little bit, or you can check us out on Patreon. We've got a whole bunch of goals set out and a whole bunch of different pledge levels, so I won't go into details here, but it basically gets you a heck of a lot more content than what you're now getting for free, and you perpetually get 10% off thewarpainter.com, a great Canadian supplier of paints and brushes and other hobby supplies, so check them out, thewarpainter.com, and otherwise hit subscribe, tell your friends, and we'll see you at our next one.
Like a monkey in a rocket on his way back.